Hello, and welcome back to the Burnt Pancakes podcast. I'm your host, Katie Fensky, reminding moms that everyone burns their first pancake. Today, I have a very special episode, but before I get to that, I want to let you know about our sponsor for today. This episode is sponsored by the Mothering Journal. I have talked about this before. I had the editor of this journal on the podcast on episode 62, but I cannot stop talking its praises. This is a magazine made for moms, written by moms. And there's a little something for everyone in there. If you're going through fertility struggles, there is a section about that. If you are a new mom, there's a section about that. If you're a mom juggling those crazy elementary school schedules, there's a section for that. And if you're a preteen, teen, mother sending your child off to college, there are sections for that. It is just such a wonderful compilation of mothers coming together to share their stories. And what a better thing to do, but to support one another that way. It's a beautiful physical magazine that you will get in your mailbox each month with your subscription, and it is 100% worth every penny. I absolutely love it. If you are interested in getting your own subscription, you can go to themotheringjournal.com or visit them on social media at Mothering Journal. Okay, let's get started with this next conversation. This one is a part 2 for the conversation that we started last week with Kimberly Ward. Kimberly Ward started off by telling us about her 2-year sailing trip with her family. So a family of 3 aboard a 34-foot boat and how they survived that. She is just such a gem to talk to. I loved hearing her story. So I think you're going to love the second half of this, where she tells us about homeschooling and surviving being on a boat for that long, and how she got her book started. So I love her story. So please enjoy part 2 of the Burnt Pancakes podcast.
Yes.
What about passports? So when you're flying, you have to go through customs. When you're sailing, do you have to report that you're there?
Yes, you do.
Okay.
We have 16 new stamps in each of our passports. I'd say for an 11-year-old, she was, by the time we turned
Quite a
around and
lot.
came back, it was
Yeah.
a pretty impressive passport. You have to, as soon as you arrive, we raise what's called a Q flag or a quarantine flag, and it's a bright yellow flag that says,
Okay.
"I've just arrived in your country." And the captain takes all of the passports and the ship's papers and our documentation and all of that, and he goes ashore and he has to check in through customs and immigration, and
Oh,
you
interesting.
really start to learn what island time is. There may be one person in an entire country who manages customs and immigration, and if an airplane came in at the airport, then he's certainly not going to be available for an hour or two. And so you sit and you wait and you learn island time, and
Just
but
enjoy
he
the
checks
scenery.
us in.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he checks us in at each port.
Okay. What about, did you run into any sticky situations, or was it all smooth sailing? Any weather issues? Anything broke on the boat?
Well, first off, let me just say puberty and menopause on a 34-foot boat. They probably don't even need to elaborate much more.
Doesn't have to go outside the boat. Yep.
We managed, our goal was to have 3 ways off of the boat, so we each had some independence. So we had a dinghy, which is like a family car, and
Okay.
that's a little tiny boat. For us, it was an inflatable boat with an engine, and that's what we took to shore, and that's what we took, to go exploring. But we also had a kayak and we also had a paddleboard,
Oh,
which meant
nice.
everyone could go blow off their own steam in different
That's good.
places.
So you planned for that. You knew
We
we're going to
planned
need
for
a
that.
break from each other.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Mm,
yeah. 34 feet, even the best of families, it's going to be too small.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure there are times when a 6,000 square foot house is too small for people.
So true.
We weather-wise, we take our itinerary planning from the weather. It rules. And if the weather says don't go, you don't go. We're pleasure cruisers, and so we're not on any sort of a time frame. Um, these days there's extraordinarily good weather forecasting.
Yeah.
I can't imagine, I'd look 100 years ago and how people crossed oceans in sailboats is beyond me
Yeah.
then. But people did. They were much smarter and or braver or more naive than I. Um, so we have good weather forecasting and we made all of our travel plans based on that. Rather than saying on the, 21st of July, we need to be here.
Mm.
It's you aim towards places. And so when does the hurricane season start? Is it June 1 or July 1? It's July 1 in the Atlantic that hurricane season starts. And many insurance companies will not insure you um, if you're in a hurricane zone for a named storm
Okay.
during X dates.
Okay.
And so some of it was dictated, but you just get your little self where you need to be way earlier than you need to be there. And so it's pleasure cruising. Another question we get asked a lot about sticky situations is pirates, and where we were is not a hotbed for pirate activity. Um, the Bahamas are extraordinarily safe, contrary to what current media would like people to believe.
Mm-hmm.
And we laugh and we say, don't kid yourself. The two most dangerous places that we were the entire trip were Washington, D.C. and Miami.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And it puts it
Yeah,
into
it
perspective.
does.
And
Yeah.
so even if you hear, it's often sensational. Somebody was hijacked on a boat and was murdered. Okay. Sensational because it so rarely happens. Whereas if I live in even downtown Boston, my odds of getting my car hijacked are
Way higher.
so much higher.
Yeah.
And so sometimes sensational stories, you have to watch what you hear in media. It's like an airplane accident and it's generally catastrophic. And so then you think I should be afraid of flying. When in fact, if you look at statistics and logically and rationally, you're so much safer in an airplane than you are in a car on a road.
Thousands of
So
flights that aren't safe. Yeah.
yeah, so it's very similar to that in terms of safety. Within the cruising community, there's also a website called Noon Site, and they're like kind of a cruising guide online. And so they have the latest check-in and check-out information for different countries, but they also have the incident reports. And so you'll know if in Anchorage or a country, for example, we would stay far away from Venezuela right now. They're in a very desperate situation, and desperate people do desperate things. The people who are um, hijacking boats and stealing things from boats from Venezuela are simply desperate for food.
Mm-hmm.
They're desperate to survive.
Yeah.
And so people do desperate things when they are in desperate situations. And so just knowing, you kind of keep up with the news of what's where. There were maybe along our route, there was one, two, three, maybe five places that were just recommended not to go to. We ended up going to three of them with a group of cruisers. We may not have gone alone, but when you meet up with other boats that you enjoyed traveling with, or for us that had kids the same age as our daughter,
Fun.
you meet up with kid boats is what they call, and you target each other because all the kids need friends.
Interaction.
And
Oh, that's so
so
cool.
yeah, so we ended up with five boats that we traveled with, probably from like July until the end of the year, off and on in various stages. You didn't keep the same schedule, but we were all in touch and we were all doing stuff for much of 5 months. And so we did two of those places we went to with that group of boats and had no problems.
Yeah.
So no, people in the rest of the world are much more open and friendly to visitors than we are in the United States.
And then when
And
people,
it just their and my husband says their sense of hospitality has been instilled in them.
oh,
And and I used to love going to the markets. I'd find different fruits or vegetables or things, that I wasn't familiar with. And
hmm
I'd ask the shopkeeper, how do you know when this is ripe? When it's good to eat, and how would
hmm
you prepare this for your family? And I ended up finding kalu, which I'd never heard of before. And it's basically a spinach, but it's much more
oh,
heat tolerant.
huh.
And then there's what do they call it? Culantro, which is again a heat tolerant version of cilantro.
Wow.
Yeah. And,
Did
so
you?
you look,
Oh, go
oh,
ahead.
go ahead.
I was going to say, did most of the country speak Spanish? And did you have to learn it? What language was mostly spoken?
Mostly English. The longest we were any place, we were 6 weeks between French islands. There are an awful lot of French
Okay.
islands. In Puerto Rico, obviously they speak Spanish there. Dominican
Mhm.
Republic, they speak Spanish there. And Dominican Republic, I did have to dust off a bit of my old Spanish. Um, Puerto Rico, everybody wanted to prove how good their English was. And so speaking
Made
wise,
it
it was
easy for you.
mostly spoken, except for when you went to a store, all of the signs and everything are in
Hmm
Spanish. Um, and then, and so we were getting kind of good at that. My daughter, that was the language she picked for our trip. And so she was, homeschooled in Spanish for 2 years.
hmm
And, and I try and nudge her, and 10-year-old new to Spanish, not exactly interested in speaking it.
You
But
order.
yeah, exactly. You order. Um, and so we had this Spanish, and I thought, oh great, we're just going to get so much better and better. And then we went through the Virgin Islands and uh St. Martin, and all of those places all speak English.
hmm
And so we got down, and we didn't do a whole lot of the French islands. Where did we stop on the way down? We must have stopped, very quick stop in Martinique. But it just so happens the French islands have more protected anchorages for how the wind was going to blow on the way home. So we kind of saved them for the way home. And so on the way home, we spent nearly 6 weeks in French speaking
Oh,
islands.
wow.
And a lot of pointing, a lot of nodding, a lot of using the guidebooks. We
hmm
all learned how to say please and thank you and ask a couple questions. But this was long before Google Translate was there. We
Yeah.
certainly could have used that
Yes.
a number of occasions. It took us a very long time to figure out where a car rental place was. We did not have good directions, and then we didn't know how to ask. So there's a lot of wandering going on from that. And, ordering, you kind of point at things, and, we ate a lot of ham sandwiches because we know how to say ham.
Say that. What was your favorite place that you stayed?
Oh, it's hard. That's such a hard question. We narrowed it down to top five.
Okay.
And Bequia was one of our favorite places. It was a place I'd never even heard of. It's in the country of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And it's not even so much that it was the perfect place, but that was where we met up with four other kid boats, the group that we cruised with. So we were all in like a great place. It kind of depends where you are
Good
mentally
memories.
and
Yeah.
physically.
hmm
And if you're just tired of it, they also had the most fantastic grocery store in Bequia called Doris's. And she was an Indian gal who imported the most amazing things at her grocery store. So just, some foods that
Yeah.
we hadn't
Yeah.
seen in a very long time. We got rice paper wrappers to make summer rolls, with fresh
Mhm.
fish that we'd caught and things like that. And it was just, we hadn't seen some of those foods. We got olives one night, and I'm pretty sure the gal who bought the olives, paid about $3 per olive. But you're just so excited about having something that's a little bit different.
Yeah. Okay, tell me a little bit about the Love Us postcards because I love this
Oh,
story. This is so
I
sweet.
was so thrilled that we had this little trick up our sleeves.
Did you
When
plan this
Allie,
ahead of time? Did you plan to do this or just kind of came up?
no, I did plan it
Okay. Okay.
because starting when Allie was 3, we had tried to have more kids. We thought we would be, one of those big, wild, boisterous families. Both my husband and I come from families like that. And we just thought we'd have 3 or 4. And it was not to be. So when Allie was 3 was when we had delivered a stillborn, and we'd had a miscarriage, and just our hearts were broken.
Yeah.
And we said, God has given us this really delightful kid. Let's put time there. And it's a poignant time. It was a before and after moment for me, because I remember looking down a row of an airplane after my dad had died. My mother moved out to be by my sister. And I looked down the row, and here's this, blonde, curly headed, precious, precocious, curious thing. And I thought, this is my family.
Yeah.
This is and that's where crew of 3 came from. I was
Mhm.
like, this is my crew of 3. And so we decided, we're like, well, what would we do with just one child that we might do with, the
A
small
whole
army of
bunch.
3 boys?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we said, well, traveling, is natural. And so we started talking, and we took an RV trip. And so when she was 3, we set out for the national parks in the West for 5 months. And, she's 3 years old. You're not going to remember this. She was at such a great age to do it for us, just because she totally trusted us. And so we could take her on these fantastic hikes, and she would just
Mm.
completely trust us. And so it was a fun time, but she was never going to remember it. And somebody had said, why don't you write postcards home to yourself? And then she'll have it as a book. Well, it became so I came home, and we had about 40 postcards, and so there we are, standing on the corner in Winslow,
Yeah.
Arizona. And,
Mm.
I wrote a postcard, and it's like a snapshot of where everybody is on that moment. We caught a tuna, wherever we
Yes.
were, and, like the first time, or this is where we met Daydreamer, one of our favorite boats. And, you know, it's just a snapshot. And so I thought, I think I'm going to do this again. Well, we took those and I laminated them so she could read the back of it and see the picture on the front. And I put it into a little 4x6 book, spiral bound and everything. And it was, when she was a toddler, her favorite book
Oh,
to
yes.
read. And
Yes.
so she doesn't remember. She desperately wants to, but she doesn't remember. However, these
She knows. Yeah.
stories, she knows what's there.
Mhm.
And as a caveat, as an aside, my daughter she turns 20 in a few weeks, and she's
Mm.
in her second year at the University of Glasgow in Scotland.
Wow. There's that
So when you
adventurer in her.
raise a traveler,
You have. Yes. Yes.
she travels. Yes, she is. She marches to her own drum. She went to junior high marching to her own drum, which is a gift I wish I had been given.
Yes. Oh, for sure.
Yeah. And so I knew with the postcards that I wanted to send postcards. And one of Allie's homeschool assignment was to keep, in order to keep
Keep
in
like a
touch with
journal.
family. And
Mhm.
she kept a journal, but also she was responsible for sending out 5 postcards a week.
Okay.
And like to her grandmother and to her aunties, and you know different people. And she sent one to her best friend at home every single week. Her best friend got a
Oh.
postcard from her at home. And so during that time, I was, when we were in DC, it was easy. I'm like, oh, we went to the Vietnam Veterans
Mhm.
Memorial, let's go pick up a postcard for that. And so I would just dash them off while she was doing homeschool. It was kind of a nice thing. Somebody had given us a postcard home, like make your own postcard kit. And and I kind of had it, and I'm like, I don't know what we're going to do with this. But while postcards were plenty of times when we were on a trip where there, first off,
Yes.
wasn't even a store. And,
Wow.
and then there are no postcards. And
Yeah.
so like all the brochures, like if you'd stopped in an island like in Long Island in Bahamas, they had a visitor center. And so you go in and you pick up and you're like, oh, here's a brochure on the out islands. And so we'd cut pictures. Sometimes we drew
So
them. And so
cute.
half of them are handmade.
Oh.
And so it's like this hodgepodge of them, but we got home, and I sent them all the time, like anytime anything happened. And for me, it was like a little bit of a journal. And so
Mhm.
I sent them home. And when I got home, I was kind of surprised. There were 300
Oh my gosh. Was it a
postcards.
PO box? Was it a PO box? Was it just
Yep, I sent it. Yeah,
stuffed?
we had a PO box because we still needed to maintain a local presence
Yes. Oh
for
my
our rental
gosh.
properties and our moorings and stuff. And so I got home, and one of my girlfriends was picking up the mail about, every couple of weeks. There wasn't a whole lot of mail in there,
Mhm.
but
How
picking up
fun
the
to
mail,
see all those.
it
Yeah.
was like overwhelmingly fun. And so I stashed them in, the little the Tupperware like shoe bins, like
Mhm.
that size. They fill one of those.
Wow.
And I kind of, I had them. We got home in 2016, and we had a lot of life come at us really quickly. Um, my mother got quite ill, and we were two failed assisted livings, and we finally moved her in with us from Colorado, and renovated
Mhm.
the house. And then a little year later COVID hit, and my daughter's in high school, and I mean, you name it, and it was
Crazy.
going
Can
on.
we just go back to the islands where we can slow down, right? Was
And you
life
think,
so fast paced when you got home?
oh, it was so
What a different.
overwhelming. It
Mhm.
was so overwhelming. One of the family with the 5 kids, her mantra is one thing a day. Like if you're doing laundry today, that is what you're doing. Like,
Wow.
we don't
I'm like
have
my
the
brain right now. I'm
luxury.
like, I've
No.
got 10 things on my to-do list today.
And I come
Wow.
home and I have this
Mhm.
list, and it's a
Interesting.
different pace. I mean,
Yeah.
now laundry is not like I bring the baskets down from upstairs and toss them in the machine, and then go in and, put dinner in a crock pot
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
Laundry is quite the ordeal.
Yes.
You're always going somewhere, and because it's so infrequent, you're carrying these massive bags, and it takes the whole family. So it's not even like it can be a nice little me time. Um, You've got everyone with you to carry things. And they're unair conditioned place. We did not see hot water to do our laundry. We may have seen it in Bahamas, one place in the two places in the Bahamas. But from the time we left the Bahamas and went to Grenada and came back, we did not see laundry with hot water.
Wow.
So it's all cold water. So like everything's gray.
Mhm. Yeah.
One of the other reasons I love Beckway so much is that there was the laundry boat.
Oh,
The
wow.
laundry boat came to your boat. You hailed them on the VHF, which is like your
Uh-huh.
little telephone. The laundry boat came to your boat, picked up your laundry,
I need one of
cook
those
it.
here.
Like, I need one of those. And
Oh my
then
gosh.
they boil it. And so that it's all hot water there, but
Mhm.
a lot of things didn't quite come back the same as they left. And then you could be like out and about in town, and you would see your laundry
Oh,
drying,
hanging out there.
usually on like bushes and stuff. It's not like they had
Oh,
like,
that's so funny.
so yeah, laundry was interesting. But
Yeah,
so do your laundry, or you go and you're in search of propane, and that's what you're doing today.
got it.
And we don't have that notion.
No, it's so much simpler. And
It
now
is a
with us, it's
much
like, I've got this, I've got that, I've got pickup, I've got sports, I got that. It's just like you're go, go, go all the time. Yeah.
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 Yeah, and it's hard. I'm trying to bring more of what I've learned
Mm.
on the boat home. And, literally, I got home 6 days ago. And let me tell you, I'm like, did we go to?
When did you write your book?
Started writing it in 2016, the year we got home.
Okay.
And I joined NaNoWriMo, which is National Novel Writers Month.
Okay.
And I've always been a writer. I've always been a journaler. I've never shared any of my work other than school papers.
Oh,
And I never thought I had a story worth telling. And so when I came home, I'm like, I think I do.
that's a story. Yes.
That's a story. Now, I've come to realize, just like I did, that the Bahamas had plenty of culture and history that I didn't know anything about it.
Mhm.
Every single person you meet has a story.
Mm.
Like there is fascination everywhere. And so now I'm like, oh, I have this book in me, I have that book in me, I have
Oh,
so many
yes.
things in me.
Yeah.
And I'm now kind of blessed. I'm actually able to write for the Boat Galley, the cookbook that I love
Oh,
so much. I
cool.
ended up meeting Carolyn and Carolyn Sherlock, and she runs the Boat Galley, and it's just a fantastic organization. And I'm now part of the Boat Galley team,
Oh,
where I
cool.
get to write as the kind of the reluctant, not really reluctant, but I don't know, maybe the idiot sailor. I'm not quite sure what, like
Novice.
the
Novice?
novice, yes, the unlearned sailor.
Nice.
And she grew up with boats, and she's like, I can't even understand somebody who doesn't understand like anchoring, but you asked the question is a very valid question. I
Mhm.
didn't know that there's a difference between a marina,
Yeah.
a mooring, and an anchor. Like these are just
Mhm.
some things I don't know. And she can't even see that
Yeah.
because she grew up with boats her entire life.
Mm.
And so anyway, and she was generous enough to write a blurb for my book as well. And I've worked with her at the Annapolis Boat Show, and we're now gotten to be very good friends. But uh, so I started writing it in 2016, and the idea behind the National Novel Writers Month is 50,000 words in 30 days, which is kind of Stephen King
Yeah.
type
Lot.
numbers.
Mhm.
And I managed to do it. I flew through it.
Mhm.
I had so much fun
It
writing
was
it. And
fresh.
yeah, I just, I let it all out. And it was mostly about how did we do it? Like how did we get gone? Not so much about the trip, but
Okay.
what were our plans and what did we do to get ourselves away from, we were just missing the minivan and the travel soccer. We had
Mhm.
every other trapping of suburban family. And so how do you walk away from that? And then how do you make the money work? And I'm pretty open
Mhm.
in the book about, what our funds had to be to go and how we ended up doing it. And and then buying the boat, and then the homeschooling. There's an awful lot about the homeschooling. And the boat projects, and those were tough chapters for me to write because they're not mine, they're my
Mhm.
husband's. And
Mhm.
so I wrote them from my point of view, but with a lot of his input.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how did we handle banking and mail? And we happened to own two other rental properties, and then we were renting out our home. And how do you do it all? And
Yeah.
so that's what I've written about. But I got to the end of NaNoWriMo, and I'm not sure if I was more surprised that I had actually written
Done it.
53,000 words, because that's a lot of words,
Mhm.
or that I wasn't done. And so I was like, okay. And I had gone back to work. I'd taken a job in human resources again and gone back to work, to kind of ease our transition back in. And, everybody needed new cell phones, and we needed a
Yep.
new car. And my daughter had grown 8 inches and, was all of a sudden in junior high. And, so there were a lot of things, a lot of expenses. And so I had gone back to work that December. And so I had to put the book aside for a little bit. And then that's when all of this went down with my mother. And so it was a long time before I picked it back up.
Mhm.
And um, I finally moved. I empty nested to an extreme. I moved my mother to an assisted living because we needed to reclaim our home, and she needed more care than I was able to give, and I could sure she'd be safe and well cared for there. And she's still very close by. So I'm there, pretty regularly.
Mhm.
Um, Sent my daughter to Scotland for university and
Mm.
sent my husband across that ocean because I knew I was never doing it. We had some friends who were moving their boat from the Mediterranean to the Caribbean, and they asked him to crew, and I'm like, this is it. This is your one chance. Go.
Yeah.
And so I empty nested and I did a lot of healing from full-time caregiving. And I really went back into my book for my birthday that year. I read it cover to cover. And if I liked it, I was going to figure out a plan to make it happen. And so that was September of 22. And that following, so I finished my rough draft by the end of March. And then I specifically chose to independently publish because I didn't want to go through the lengthy time frame. And quite honestly, I wanted to have all of the creative choices be mine and take the risk, but also take all the reward as well.
Mhm.
So I self-published and I published at the end of August.
Wow, that is incredible. So, and something so you were so proud of.
You know, it's funny. My daughter traveling on her own when we got back, and my book for us are bigger experiences than living on the boat. However, living on the boat led us to both of those.
Yes. Yeah, that's incredible. Well, if people wanted to find your book, where can they find it?
They can go to my website. It's Kimberly J. Ward writer.com. And they are welcome to go to the website. From the website, they can find Crew of Three, How Bold Dreams and Detailed Plans Launched Our Family Sailing Adventure. And it is sold at independent bookstores. It is sold at Barnes and Noble. It is sold at Amazon and just about any
Oh,
other retailer they want to. But if they want to learn about us, and also on my website, KimberlyJWard.writer.com is my blog, which is I am now painstakingly scanning and posting each one of our postcards from
oh, that's
Love.
so awesome. That's so
Yeah,
cool.
I'm
It's something
excited.
to have forever and for your daughter to,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. I've kind of lived in immortal fear that there would be a fire or a flood or something before I get these done.
Yeah.
So I'm actually quite happy scanning through them.
Happy. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This was such an incredible story, and I enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you so much, Katie. I had a ball. I love chatting about it.